In new Ahsoka footage, we see Shin Hati taking out some New Republic officers with ease, using a mighty force push. I like to analyze each frame, and I noticed this guy, he's just casually minding his own business, just trying to get the hell out of there. Because if you see Shin coming towards you with a lightsaber, you know you're screwed. 1 week to go. Today we've got a bit of Ahsoka speculation, a couple of updates. We're also going to be talking about the future of Star Wars animation and the Bad Batch. It's going to be a good time. We got some ups, we got some downs, but overall it's balanced. I'm here to bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. Here we go. Star Wars Ahsoka seems to be a series incorporating a lot of aspects of the Skywalker saga, what came before, with the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, but what about what comes afterwards? There is a show that Dave Filoni and Carrie Beck worked on, two very important people for the Ahsoka show, and that was Star Wars Resistance. It's a show later in the timeline that Dave is very proud of, and I believe it has major connections to Ahsoka, and there's already proof of this, not only in terms of some aesthetic choices, but also some of the characters. New Republic Senator Hamato Giono, the father of Kaz, is already confirmed to be part of Mon Mothma's government from the trailers. And this got me thinking, are they going to make some other connections to characters that feature later on too? And the only reason I bring this up is because in one of the new trailers, Hera Syndulla seems to be at a New Republic base. Now, given Star Wars canon has expanded the type of bases and locations of bases that the New Republic had, it's impossible to tell where this is, but I've got to say it does look a lot like Yavin 4. Now, after the Battle of Yavin, as we learn in the Crawl of the Empire Strikes Back, the rebels evaded the base, and as we see in episode 5, they headed for Hoth. But later in the timeline at this point, with the New Republic government in place, could they have returned? We do know of a family who did settle there around this time, the Damerons, Kez Dameron and Shara Bey, the mother and father of Poe Dameron, who by the way at this point is around the age of 8, and were about in the same year that Shara Bey dies. She worked for the New Republic, and they settled down on Yavin 4. Could this be a connection they dare to make? Could we see a young Poe Dameron being raised by his dad Kez? And if so, could Poe be friends with Jacen Syndulla? I know it's a long shot, I know it's not the most popular idea, but it's clear that Dave Filoni is not afraid to draw from that rather obscure series. And even recently in the Bad Batch Season 2, they drew upon a droid from Star Wars Resistance, R2-C4. After Poe's mum died, they received a letter from Leia Organa, and later on, Poe himself fought with the New Republic and then the Resistance, but as I say, that is much further down the timeline. And if he does appear in this show, it wouldn't be too surprising. Jon Favreau has made it very clear that he's got interest in introducing more characters from the sequels. We even see Poe Dameron in Chapter 15's outro concept art. And just to note, Poe Dameron's parents fought on Endor, and they were part of Shattered Empire in 2015, The Road to the Force Awakens. So if they're trying to make the galaxy feel a bit more complete, this is an addition they could very well do. And I'd be curious, whether it's in the Ahsoka show or in Dave's film, if they do make connections to sequel characters, how fans who didn't like 7, 8 and 9 feel about it. Is it going to make things worse, or is it going to make them feel better to know the characters get a bit more development, even if it's an earlier period of their lives? But in either case, Hera Syndulla, the more we see of her in these trailers, looks fantastic, and yesterday, they gave us so much new promo material, some new frames, some new shots, really just to get us pumped, and in my case, and in the case of so many fans, I'm feeling this. I'm ready. So in other Ahsoka news, we are now just 1 week away. In just 7 days time, we're gonna have 2 new episodes of Star Wars. You're gonna see me break down both. We're gonna nerd out, we're gonna theorize, we're gonna analyze. This is gonna be so much fun. And StarWars.com have posted a guide for Ahsoka beginners. Those who've not seen the animated shows, there is a fantastic summary that goes through introduction in the Clone Wars movie 15 years ago, all the way up to Star Wars Rebels and Mando, and I think it's about time they did something like this. Now on the subject of Star Wars animation, yesterday we got a terrifying headline. Lucasfilm is going to shut their Singapore operations, affecting more than 300 employees, which affects Star Wars Animation and a subsidiary of ILM. We'll get into this article in just a moment, but in response to it, Joel Aaron, Lucasfilm's Director of Cinematography, Lighting and VFX confirms Lucasfilm Animation is not closing. They're still working on the Bad Batch Season 3 and Tales of the Jedi Season 2, and they're going to use their other studios for future animated projects. So panic averted, this is not going to affect the future of Star Wars animation, which is what we originally thought was going to be the case. I don't know what they're going to do after the Bad Batch Season 3, that is the highly anticipated final season of that show. But even if they're going to use their other subsidiaries, Disney has promised cuts to both Marvel and Star Wars. We're probably going to see less animation overall. And so going back to Ahsoka, Rosario Dawson has spoken about her journey in a new promo called A Hero's Journey, and it's so good to have a Star Wars fan play such a huge character. Her dedication, her commitment to the role, her unwavering humbleness, and really getting down some of those essential poses, facial expressions, truly being the best representation possible of bringing this character to live action at this stage. They made her do what they did with Ewan, stand in front of that giant screen, watching different clips of Star Wars, watching different clips of her own character in Mando and Book of Boba Fett. She's brought to tears, she is so overwhelmed with the reality of being part of the Star Wars universe. It's a dream come true. She's a great actress in her own right, she's been in some fantastic productions, but even in spite of the career she's carved out for herself, the big name that she is, if you're a Star Wars fan as an actor, it is your dream to be part of the Star Wars universe. And I can't wait to see her interact with Anakin. I think at this stage that is what most fans just can't wait to see. The connections to the prequel trilogy, to Anakin Skywalker, and seeing Hayden again. In other Mandoverse news, insider Jeff Snyder has debunked the rumour that The Mandalorian Season 4 is going to be a movie. It's gonna continue on Disney Plus as a show. It's always contentious when there's rumours saying that the conventional formats that worked are gonna experience some sort of shift or change, and many fans at the time even said this rumour just sounds a bit too far-fetched. Well, it turns out it probably is. Even if it's a consideration Lucasfilm had, it seems as though they're going to continue on Disney Plus after Ahsoka with Mando Season 4. As for when it's going to go into production is anyone's guess. The strikes make things very, very complicated. And so now some Star Wars gaming news. According to the narrative director on the game, Star Wars Outlaws setting is a dream playground. Some very exciting news coming out of this. There were some worries after the gameplay footage and also the more cinematic trailer that this game was going to feel a bit too much like Jedi Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor. The same colour palettes, the same sort of textures, the same scenery, but no, they're gonna do more with it. So here's what they say: Star Wars is no stranger to video game adaptation. In fact, depending on your age, Star Wars video games may have been the primary way you interacted with the franchise before the prequel trilogy. Star Wars Outlaws is going to represent something new. Game Informer says this is the first time we're exploring an open-world Star Wars game. So just to skip ahead to the main reveals of this interview with the creatives, they say they're putting a lot of emphasis on the original trilogy. The game is set between episodes 5 and 6, and you're gonna feel like it is. They're not deviating too much from that story. As we saw with Jabba the Hutt with Han Solo, there are gonna be a lot of tie-ins. But they try to set themselves a challenge, stay away from the Empire, the Rebellion, the Jedi, and the Sith. Instead, focusing on a thief who with her companion Nyx is trying to scrape by a living, who finds herself with a bounty on her back and launched into a dangerous underworld. They were then asked if they spoke to the Mandalorian writers, because there's a lot of underworld gritty bounty hunter feel to that show. But they don't give a direct answer. They say we have a relationship of very close collaboration with Lucasfilm Games, and we regularly connect with them on every topic related to our story. So no definitive yes or no, and the most promising thing for me as a fan of the expanded universe is that the creator loved Shadows of the Empire growing up, and he also teases cameos. But share your thoughts on this and everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.